Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA. This movie is directed by Peyton Reed, who previously directed the other two Ant-Man movies. This movie stars Paul Rudd, Jonathan Majors, Katherine Newton, with Michelle Pfeiffer, Evangeline Lilly, and Michael Douglas. Now, the plot of this movie is Scott Lang, Ant-Man, is no longer just a little guy. He's no longer an unknown. He's popular. He's well known around the neighborhood. And the Ant family, if you will, has grown. Cassie's now older, and she's been learning more science things, more technology. And she develops this device that's able to send a signal down to the quantum realm, where Janet Van Dyne was previously held, where the Avengers went during Avengers Endgame. But Janet has a real issue with this, and before the act can be prevented, they all get sucked into the quantum realm. And that's where our movie takes place. Unbeknownst to them, Janet Van Dyne has a history with something, or should I say someone in there, that's a very, very dangerous threat. So when I first saw the trailer to this movie, I was happy because we get an OG Avenger again, Scott Lang, and he's played by Paul Rudd. I like the other two Ant-Man movies. Granted, they're not, top tier MCU for me, but I knew this movie was going to be fun and adventurous, not taking itself too seriously. But then when I heard that Kang the Conqueror was going to be introduced in this movie and going to be the next big villain featured in the next phase, I was really excited because Jonathan Majors is a good actor, and I'm excited to see what he does with that character. So, I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA, and let me just say that, well, the title's half right. So let me start with the positives. Scott Lang and the gang get shrunken down to the quantum realm. So there, they see all these interesting environments, creatures, places, a lot of things that you'd almost see in like a sci-fi space movie, but here it's down, it's smaller. It's almost like Land of the Lost. You see these weird creatures that have had to adapt to this environment. You see this world that doesn't really have a sun or a moon, but maybe like a Van Gogh painting. Just a mixture of colors and atmosphere and clouds and just all these odd different shapes. That was interesting. And the plot is very similar to like Star Wars, where you meet these beings that live in this quantum realm. They never really specify where in the quantum realm, just like in this territory. And there are beings that are being oppressed by Kang, who's like this dictator. And so there you have the Star Wars aspect where he's this conqueror. He's controlling everything. He's got security, all this technology and everything. And you have these primitive beings that are being oppressed, that are being held down, that need to, rise up, rebel, fight back against him. A lot like Darth Vader and the Rebels, or the Empire. And then you have Star Trek type of vibes, where Star Trek a lot of times was on the Enterprise, on their ship. And occasionally they'd go down to a planet. And like the new Chris Pine trilogy, first two movies were on the ship. That's what we're used to and accustomed to. And the third movie, Star Trek Beyond, was different because most of that movie took place on this new planet. So your characters have to adapt to their surroundings. They have to meet these new characters and kind of figure out what they're going to do going forward that way. They're not, used to all the amenities and all the things they have with them normally. So that aspect of Ant-Man and the Wasp was really interesting because your characters were literally fishes out of water, not in their usual surroundings, which was nice because had this movie taken place on the streets of California or New York, it would have been a lot different, and the other Avengers for sure would have been involved. And before I get into my negatives of the movie, I'll get into the cast. Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, he's fine. Scott Lang is a likable character. This movie, you can definitely tell that Paul Rudd's getting up there in age, for sure. But his character is fine. He plays the role like he never left it. Evangeline Lilly as Wasp, she's fine. I mean, she has a new haircut, so it makes her more attractive. But her character didn't have a whole lot to do. I mean, I get that the Ant family is bigger, so you have to have all those members of it. And I feel like this movie really could have just been Ant-Man and his daughter and maybe a third party, but Evangeline Lilly, she's okay. She's just there a lot of the movie, and because she's Scott's partner, you gotta have her. Kang in this movie is so serious and threatening that he feels like Gore the God Butcher did in Thor Love and Thunder. You have this amazing villain, but then the rest of it is just funny and jokey and silly and fun, and it just feels like two separate movies. The same could even be said about Hela in Thor Ragnarok. You notice how we never had Hela leave Asgard in that movie? She was never a part of the Hulk and Thor stuff on the other planet. It's like this movie wanted to take all these ideas left on the cutting room floor for a Guardians film or Thor Ragnarok. You know, with all these prisoners and this uprising and, you know, taking out the leader and this rebellion. It was like all those loose threads that were done in other movies, they had nothing to do with. So they threw them in this movie. Because outside of the quantum realm, does any of the stuff in this movie really matter? So, because the tone is different, you know, you have the serious villain, but you have a fun adventure, it just doesn't mix well. And I feel like the MCU's momentum is slowing down, because there was a time where I was excited for an MCU movie. And yeah, it's cool we got an OG Avenger back, but, you know, I feel like the MCU, since Avengers Endgame, hasn't really had a direction. Michelle Pfeiffer is there as well, but she's really just the exposition dump. She's the one to give you the backstory and the history on who the villain is and what this place is all about. Michael Douglas is also there, but really he just reacts to stuff. That's it. I mean, it's nice to see him again, and he has a really cool entrance in the third act of the film, but he's just there to look at stuff and be amazed and question things and be confused, and, you know, that's him. Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang. She's okay. I mean, Scott Lang's daughter has to be in the movie. She gets a suit, but really she's just one note. Whether she's happy, angry, sad, she all sounds the same. Jonathan Majors is the best part of this movie. He's the Darth Vader-like character. He's the big bad villain that you don't want to mess with. Now on to the negatives. So Kang has a sidekick named MODOK, who, for Marvel comic fans, will be rejoicing that he's in the movie, but it's a lot like saying that Deadpool is an X-Men Origins Wolverine. He's really just the character by name, because instead of introducing this brand new character they could play with later on in the MCU, they just really take an existing character and change him and make him silly. And by the end of the movie, you're like, why was he even in this movie? So that's a letdown. The world, as fascinating as it looks, it doesn't feel real. It feels like a big CGI green screen that characters really can't be immersed in or tangible or grab or touch, and it just doesn't feel real. Also, you know, the movie has a real issue feeling like it matters. You know, this movie does have Kang in it, but if you watch one of the post-credit scenes, it's kind of like, so we got a good version of Kang in the Loki TV show. Here we got a bad version of Kang. So it kind of makes you wonder, what is there to look forward to? If we have all these multiverses and different timelines and all these other threats out there, if this is Kang, why give us him in the first movie? If he's the big bad, shouldn't you build up to him? If you're going to have him in the first stage of Phase 5, and you're going to flesh out the character in that way and handle him the way they did, the post-credit scene just leaves you confused. Also, I kind of feel like the MCU's momentum and magic is slowing down and dwindling. Because there was a time where I was excited and I saw every single MCU movie for the longest time. But now, after this outing, I mean, I might see it if they have returning characters come back, but, you know, it says a lot about the franchise as a whole. Also, all these TV shows that you have to kind of do homework on and watch and keep track of to understand this movie, or, you know, the in-between stuff. Like, that's the reason why I don't read big comic book arcs, because not only do you have the main issues, you have all the individual one-shots you have to read to kind of fill in all the gaps, and that's not what movies should be. You shouldn't have prerequisites, as John Campea likes to say. So, because this movie introduced Kang, and we had an OG Avenger, but the rest of it just kind of was there just to be another Ant-Man movie and to make more money, I'm going to give Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a C+. So, till next time, guys. See ya.